Welcome back YouTube, it's Robert Hall, and today we're going to talk about the new Flashpoint R2 Pro trigger coming from Adorama. So normally, Godox releases a product and Adorama rebrands it, but this is a little bit of a unique situation as this is only going to be available through Adorama. There's not going to be a Godox version of this product. This is an updated version of the R2 Pro. They're calling it the R2 Pro Mark II, naturally. And there's a lot of different feature sets on this one from the original R2 Pro. Now, even though it's an Adorama exclusive, it's still going to work with the entire Godox X series, even though there's not a Godox version directly. You guys know all this stuff is compatible, so there's not going to be any issues if you decide to pick this up and you have all Godox equipment. So first off, let's talk about all the new features that were added. The first is high sync, which is not to be confused with high speed sync. High sync instead is a radio delay that actually delays the speed of the flash, but it does not elongate the pulse, so you don't have a really long pulse, so you still have all of your flash power. There's no efficiency loss with high sync. By far my favorite update that is on this is backlit buttons. All the buttons are going to have backlighting, so now you're going to be able to see it in a dark venue. Next, this is something that I wanted on the original R2 Pro, and that is Bluetooth integration. The Bluetooth that is on the A1 that requires the A1 from Godox as a middleman is now integrated directly into this trigger, so you can control and store presets through the app without the use of the A1 flash. The main control dial has had the size increased a little bit just so it's a little bit easier to move around. And the next thing, this is going to make a lot of Mac users happy. This is going to have a Mac firmware adjustment, so you don't have to go finding a friend's PC just to upgrade your firmware. They've also added a single group test fire button, so you don't have to sit there and turn groups on and off. Instead, you can select a group and hit test. This is great if you're using the Godox equipment in a studio environment because you don't have to sit there and go through all the different modes just to test the flash, test each group of flash independently. Now you can just hit that single button and only fire the group that you have selected. Next, there's going to be modeling lamp control in increments of 5%. So you can do this independently on each group, which is going to be great with the studio lights in addition to the on-location lights. You can modify the modeling lamp percentage on any of those. Next is a large text size option that they've added, and this is a custom option. By default, it's going to have the same text as the original R2 Pro, but you also have the option to increase that text size, which just makes everything larger and more readable without getting rid of any of your options on screen. And the other main thing that you'll notice is they have added a ton of new buttons. There are now 10 dedicated function buttons, and this is probably where it's a give and take relationship because it does sacrifice the group placement that the last model had. This model has the A through E groups surrounding the primary dial, and this was done because it's thought that it would increase the speed having those group buttons really close to that primary dial. They also added an on-off function by double tapping any independent group, so it's going to be a little bit faster to turn on and turn off groups because you won't have to go through those various modes just to turn a group off. But personally, I feel like the group buttons being placed around that primary dial is just not as intuitive as they were placed on the original R2 Pro, which was a single row on the left-hand side. I also think some of those buttons are a little bit redundant. For instance, there's a dedicated zoom and a dedicated HSS button, but those are already controllable from the 4 primary buttons that you'd find on the R2 Pro, and they're duplicates now, so you just have that option in 2 places, which just kind of makes for useless clutter. So I'm obviously torn on this. I really want to try it out. I want to see how it feels to have those buttons in that irregular pattern around the primary dial. I don't doubt that it's going to be faster because it's close to the dial. I just think that I might not be able to easily find those buttons without looking, which is something that I can do with the existing R2 Pro. Another adjustment that was made was that sound and the modeling lamp control is now for each independent group. So you can toggle on and off the sound for any of the groups of flash, which I don't really know how necessary that is. I personally leave all my flashes on silent all the time, but I guess if you're changing it a lot, you now have quick access to that feature. The TCM function, which is TTL convert to manual, that function has been changed quite a bit. It's now faster to both acquire your TTL reading as well as switch to manual and then convert to manual. It's all faster with the new button layout. Another very minor change, but I think this was a really smart decision, is that when you modify all groups at once, it's not going to change the compensation of your TTL like it does with manual. On the current R2 Pro, if you increase it, it increases your TTL compensation as well as the manual power of your groups, but you're generally modifying all your power levels if you've made a camera setting change, which you don't need to do that on TTL. So that was a really smart decision to add in. All in all, I really think they did a great job of adding a lot of little shortcuts and physical buttons so that you can get through navigating the R2 Pro trigger even faster. They really thought about how photographers are utilizing this and tried to reduce as many button presses as possible. But the biggest thing is, are you going to be more comfortable with the A through E group positioning versus how it was done on the last group, which was very intuitive and easily to identify without looking at. So what do you guys think of this new format? Do you think that there are too many buttons on this device? Does it look too complex to you? Or do you think that all these changes made were really good moves? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Alright guys, like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, keep on shooting, YouTube.